Hey Gothamites, and welcome to History of the Batman. I'm your host Londyn, and here we relive the defining moments of one of the most iconic figures in comic book art and literature, the Batman. Every week we will highlight amazing Batman mythos spanning over his incredible 77 years in DC Comics, from comic books to film to television and to video games. For our first vlog, we're going to be discussing the highly acclaimed DC Comics anthology, Batman Black and White, which turned 20 years old this year. This first comic issue, presented here, came out June in 1996. There are many reasons why Batman Black and White is a fan favorite anthology of Batman tales. For one, it presents one-shot tales, which means you won't become lost within the current continuity, or you won't have to catch up or reference other comics. You can jump right into the story and enjoy the creator's version of Batman. There's so many different rotating creators, and most of them have worked on the Batman character before. So they have the opportunity to create their own Batman story or their own interpretation of this character that perhaps they didn't get the opportunity to in the current timeline. And the biggest draw to this arc is because it's in black and white. Usually when we read comic books, we are tied and drawn into the colors that each panel presents. Usually it sets the mood or the emotion of the story of the characters. And most of the time it's the writer, the colorist, the inker, the penciler, the letterer that all work together as this fine oil machine to bring you the Batman story that you love. Here we have the same emotion, the same beautiful stories, but all in these stark shadings of black and white. And they're all unique in their own way. And we get to see a different side of Batman, his rogues gallery, the city of Gotham that he lives in, all within these beautiful black and white stories. One of the most memorable black and white stories is in the first issue of Batman Black and White, which is presented here. And the cover is by Jim Lee and Scott Williams. And the story is actually a Bruce Timm story about the Batman villain Two-Face, and it's called Two of a Kind. A little history on Two-Face. He was inspired by Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And created by the Batman co-creators Bob Kane and Bill Finger, he debuted, Harvey Kent, which turned into Harvey Dent, debuted in Detective Comics 66 from August of 1942. During this golden age period from 1942 to 1954, we are presented the character Two-Face, who is written off as a gimmick character who's obsessed with the number 2, and his silly crimes reflect that obsession. Once we enter the silver age of the 1960s, he almost becomes an obscure figure, not even appearing as one of the many colorful rogues in the live-action TV series Batman starring Adam West. It isn't until the 1970s where another dynamic duo Batman creative team, Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams, reinvent Two-Face to become a darker character. In the issue Batman 234, Neil Adams recreates this character and gives him a more realistic aesthetic. Dennis O'Neil matches this, showing that Two-Face has a scarred mind and not just his face, going deeper into the character's trauma, dealing with this split personality. We see this continue actually in the 1990s when Andrew Helfer, in the issue Batman Annual number 14, he dives deeper into the character of Harvey Dent in Two-Face, showing his tragic childhood with an abusive father, showing that Harvey Dent suffers from bipolar disorder and intense paranoia, and once he is scarred with the acid, his disorder heightens, and you see that Two-Face is scarred not just on the outside but also on the inside, becoming a tragic character not just for Harvey Dent but also for Batman, who feels that he can't save his one-time friend in Harvey Dent. Two-Face reaches a larger audience outside of comic books in the Batman the Animated Series that came out in 1992, and Harvey Dent debuted in the episodes Two-Face Part 1 and Part 2, where we meet District Attorney Harvey Dent, and we also meet his other side, Big Bad Harv. Once Harvey Dent is transformed into Two-Face, Bruce Wayne and Batman both feel guilt over not being able to save Harvey Dent from this cruel fate of being scarred, just like he feels the guilt of not being able to save his own family, who perished when he was very young. Bruce Timm, who is the producer and artist on Batman the Animated Series, a few years later, wrote and illustrated the story we're talking about today, called Two of a Kind. In the story, we meet Dr. Marilyn Crane, who is a stunningly beautiful and brilliant plastic surgeon and psychologist who changes Two-Face's life forever by reconstructing his face and bringing him back to being Harvey Dent. The notion is if his face is fixed through the plastic surgery, the idea of Two-Face and that persona goes as well. And so he is released from Arkham Asylum, seeing that he is cured. And from the therapy that him and Marilyn Crane have with one another, they instantly fall in love and they plan to get married. Along the line, Marilyn introduces her twin sister, Madeline, which is a complete shock to Harvey Dent. And he has a fear, just like Marilyn does, that he will revert back to his obsession with duality if he knew that his fiancée was a twin. While Harvey tries to fight this urge of going back to the obsession of two and duality, Madeline one night comes to visit him in his office, and she seduces him, and they both begin this whirlwind love affair. It's days before Harvey is supposed to marry Marilyn, and while he is in love with her and he sees her as the perfect woman, he cannot get the thought of Madeline and the nights they spend together out of his head. And so he has to make the decision whether he wants to stay and marry Marilyn or if he's going to be with Madeline. And in the end, he decides that he wants to marry Marilyn. So one night he comes home to see Marilyn and he finds her murdered on the floor. Written on the wall, it says, "It's just the two of us now." So he knows that Madeline has murdered her own sister so her and Harvey can be together. Feeling that he can't run away from his true destiny as Two-Face, goes to the fire, picks up hot coals, and scars half of his face that was fixed by plastic surgery. He then asks Madeline to meet him at the Gotham City docks, and he reveals to her that this is his true self, showing that his face is scarred and he is Two-Face once again. However, Madeline knows that this is the person he really is, and she loves him and accepts him for the damaged person that he is. And although Two-Face looks into her eyes and knows that she is a wonderful woman, she reminds him too much of Marilyn inside, knowing that that is her twin sister, and decides that she has to die just as Marilyn dies, and he shoots her. And in the end, Two-Face is holding Madeline in his arms, and Batman is at the top of the docks looking down at him, and Two-Face is just awaiting Batman to take him back to Arkham Asylum with the rest of the crazy people. This story is a great Batman tale for anyone who is a fan of Two-Face. If you love the concept of this tragic character, how he was a somewhat normal person turned into a villain, Bruce Timm's Two of a Kind is perfect because it not only shows that Two-Face is scarred on the outside, no matter what he looks like on the outside, he is forever scarred on the inside, which makes him a perfect candidate for Batman's rogues, because Batman always thinks that he can somehow save the men and the women who turn to crime because he knows that there is some good in them. So trying to rehabilitate Harvey Dent is harsh on him, not just because he's Batman trying to fight crime in Gotham, but because he's Bruce Wayne and he feels that he lost one of his closest friends. The Batman Black and White anthology is now in 4 volumes and has ranged from statues such as the two presented here, this one based off of Brian Boland's Joker, and this one off of Cliff Chang's Batman. And it's also in motion comics, which you can watch on YouTube as well. If you want to learn more about memorable black and white stories, please check out our podcast on iTunes at History of the Batman with Londyn, presented by Meltdown Comics and Collectibles, which is linked directly in the description box below. If you liked this vlog, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you never miss a new episode discussing an incredible part of Batman's amazing history. I wanted to thank everyone who watched our first History of the Batman vlog. I'm excited to bring you new content, special guests, and I also wanted to thank my amazing family at Meltdown Comics and Collectibles, where this is produced and recorded. And please stop by at 7522 Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And until next week, remember Gothamites, it's all about peace, love, and Batman.